Chapter 22. Brandon grabbed my attention for a moment. I almost missed the exterior of Jordan's beautiful mansion. Wow. Do you live here alone? I don't know where I got the idea that you lived in an apartment, I said out loud, not expecting an answer. I couldn't imagine a mansion like this, setting in the middle of Manhattan. I must have passed here before, but I never knew it was a home, where someone actually lived and that I would know the person who lived there. The driveway, surrounded by trees and high hedges, not visible from the street or sidewalk. Yet the house sat just off Fifth Avenue. The cobblestone driveway led to the front door. The lights, painted black, hung on the brick facade. They were huge antique lamps, which appeared to belong to the 18th century. A guard stood outside the door, as if he was guarding Buckingham Palace. It's been in the family for over 100 years, Jordan said, amused by my reaction. I stood on the steps, just gawking at the beautiful double doors with gold handles. He stepped behind me and placed his hand behind my back and ushered me through the open doors. I employ many people. That's why the house appears to be new. It has to be kept up, and I added several additions to the place. I was planning on living here with my wife. He looked at me and smiled. Was he planning on me? No. Couldn't be, I thought. As I moved through the house, staring at the ceiling, wondering who cleaned them and how they managed to get cobwebs off them at that altitude, Jordan interrupted my moment of frivolous thinking. Let's get you comfortable. He took my backpack and handed it to a maid standing in the foyer. Miss Tyler will be staying with us for 1 or 2 nights, he said, looking to me for approval. I didn't answer because his timetable wasn't mine, and I just didn't know. All I knew was I wanted some peace from wanting and needing Brandon. Finally, I saved up enough money to get an apartment, and I had helped my father pay the mortgage out of the income I got from waiting on tables at restaurants around Manhattan. The money I gave him paid the principal, and over the 5 years of working at restaurants, I was now free to become an adult. I had what you call a real job. Or not. If I had my own place, I could be free to live the way I wanted to without fear of what my father thought, and heaven knows what he was thinking now, with me showing up on the front page of every newspaper in New York. Jordan and the maid showed me the room I would be sleeping in. It was now 1 a.m. on a Sunday morning. I looked around in awe, shook my head, and fell into the bed with Jordan standing gazing at me with a smile on his face. He appeared to be smiling a lot. I wanted to ask him, but thought better because who was I to question his way of handling things? I wanted to smile too, but I hadn't had anything to smile about in years. My mother's untimely death, falling in love with a married man, working for 5 years to help out my father, getting my dream job, having 2 men fight over me for the world to judge and blame me as if I was some kind of slut. And probably being blamed for the disappearance of Angela, Brandon's wife. There are sleeping clothes in the drawer. The maid can help you undress. No. Thank you. I think I can manage that. I've been doing that since I was 2 years old. I tried to be nice without being ungrateful. This was something new to me. I understand. Jordan nodded his head, and the maid exited the room. I sat in the bed with silence playing between us. A faint smile crossed my lips. Oh. I'm sorry. I know you want to undress, he said. His eyes smiled back and he turned and gingerly stepped to the door and closed it behind him. A sigh of relief. I wanted no more than to be left alone with my thoughts and tired body. I dropped the black dress on the mahogany floor in front of me, kicked off my shoes, and eased into the bed in my bra and panties. I was too damn tired to bother with the fancy satin pajamas that were hanging in eyesight. Besides, I wasn't used to such luxury, and they would keep me up all night thinking about how much Jordan paid for them, and how many dinners it would pay for, or how many starving children could be fed with that money. When my head sunk into those downy feathers wrapped inside the pillow, I fell into deep sleep. Jordan could have come into the room and did whatever, and I wouldn't have woke. I was just that tired. He didn't appear to be a watcher. I think he liked his women alive and responsive. But I could be wrong. I have been wrong about a lot of things. When I woke the next morning, a maid was knocking at the door. I forced myself to sit up and acclimate myself to the surroundings. I tried to straighten my hair. At first I thought I was in Maine with Brandon, and then it hit me. I had accepted an invitation to stay with Jordan. "Come in," I said. The maid walked in with a tray and a newspaper. "No. I can't have breakfast in bed." I protested, waving her away, but she didn't listen. She sat the breakfast tray on the table. "I mean, I don't want to be waited on. I'll have it downstairs with Mr. Longworth." "I'm sorry, but Mr. Longworth is not here. He ate breakfast at 9 and went to the stables to ride after lunch." "There are stables near here?" "But of course, miss," the maid said, looking at me with a strange glance. "But of course," I repeated. "What time is it?" "It's 3 in the afternoon. Will you be available for dinner?" She stood waiting for my answer. I didn't respond as quickly as she had anticipated, so she offered an explanation. "Dinner is at 6. You missed your lunch," she said to me, as if she thought that would affect my day. "Really?" I questioned. "Will that be all?" the gray-haired Scandinavian maid said, before turning and pouring some coffee for me. "No. Thank you." As soon as the door closed behind the maid, I jumped from the bed and scoffed down the breakfast. What was on that plate would feed a small country for a week. 4 different styles of eggs, 4 different ways to cook bacon, and attach a French and Spanish name, and it still would be some sort of ham. English and Chinese tea. Milk. Whole milk, 2% milk, cream, and on and on. I ate what I could, and thought that it must be nice not to think about how much food cost, or that I could waste it. After eating that enormous feast, I reached for the papers. There were several. I was lost in the moment, and I felt as if I was immune to the world. Why didn't I read the Sunday Times? I loved that paper with its book reviews, op-ed. And today was a fashion spread with the latest Hollywood hunks all decked out in designer clothes, but my hands fell inadvertently on the Post's headlines. Brawl at the Museum of Natural History. Brandon Charles and Jordan Longworth took the spotlight at a charity event. Raising money for children with cancer was never as easy as it was last night, and a few side bets were placed. Patrons made money along with the charities. The main event was the fight over the $1 million girl who sparked the brawl. Brandon Charles, married, and his wife is presumed dead, was making a spectacle of himself by fighting over the fiancé of Jordan Longworth. Continue on page 6. My head pounded. I put my head in my hands. Oh shit. I knew I had to call my father. It wasn't good to let another headline go without giving him an explanation. I fished inside my purse for my phone. I noticed that I had several text messages from Chris. First text: OMG. What is going on, Tyler? Leave you for a day, and you are in the headlines in Europe. Second text: coming home in 2 days. You need help, girl. I need more than help. My life dissolving before my eyes, and I wasn't the same. My life running fast, and I still couldn't catch it. I didn't check her third text. I decided to check Brandon's text. I'm sorry, Tyler. I didn't want you in the middle of a feud between me and Jordan. Love you, my princess. OMG. What is he doing to me? Doesn't he know that I can't resist him once he starts down that road? He's impossible. What is he thinking? I murmured aloud. I didn't want to read the next set of texts. I decided to place a call to my father. Dad, this is. I know who it is. By the sound of his voice, he wasn't reading the New York Times. He never read the Times. If a paper's main focus wasn't sports, my father had no need for it. He listened to the radio for sports commentary, and the reporters threw in gossip for good measure. Probably to liven up a boring day. I can explain. I'm sure every girl has said those misplaced words to her father once, or maybe not, but now I'm walking that road. A road where they wanted their fathers to think good of them, even when they acted badly. There is no need to explain. Just take care of yourself, and don't be a pawn for those two rich bastards. That was the first time I heard my father use that word. Maybe he thought that I had become a woman, and it didn't matter anymore. Maybe he was under the impression that I would still take his advice or listen to him. I wanted him to keep his recollection of who I once was, but that I was now an adult. I paused to fashion how I should break the news that I was moving out of his house, but it came out. I'm getting my own apartment. The silence between us grew long, and then, I understand, baby. You take care of yourself. You're smart and have a good head on your shoulder. Remember that you can always come home if New York gets too rough, my father said to me. I felt tears pooling in my eyes. I needed him because I didn't know what to do. I had no roadmap for this, and then I said goodbye. I stumbled back to the bed, I wiped a tear from my eyes, and fell in the 1,000-count Egyptian sheets, forgetting my troubles. When I woke again, it was dinner time. The maid brought in new clothes for me to wear, but instead, I reached into my bag and pulled out a pair of old jeans and a tee that had the insignia of my high school on front, and on back, "Girls are important resources. Cherish them," in bold letters. Chapter 23. Jordan and I ate dinner in his garden. I sat in sheer delight, looking around at the beautiful flowers, small vegetable garden, and well-manicured hedges, bringing privacy into a less-than-private place. It still amazed me how a large house could set in the midst of a chaotic city, surrounded by a pastoral setting. Jordan had created his own paradise. "You know it was Brandon driving that car last night," he said, catching me by surprise and studying me for a reaction. I hadn't noticed. I lied, between eating a piece of cake and a sip of coffee. Did I mention that I had died, or felt death coming on? Is this how you feel when you grow up? I wondered. Is this how it feels to want to protect yourself from someone intruding on your mind and feelings? The last frontier. The lie. I thought now would be a good time to discuss your job. Wow. That was a relief. I thought he would want to talk about Brandon. I wasn't ready, and clearly he wasn't either. I think it would be better if you weren't working in the same branch as the one I operate. The distraction is getting to be too much for me, and I know you are uncomfortable. I shivered. Here I was trying to get my own apartment, and now I have to start looking for a job again. I sat back waiting for the next shoe to drop. I'm going to send you to my 7th Avenue branch. It's in the heart of the garment district. I think you would do fine there. I was stunned. I expected him to say more. I still had a job doing what I love. What do you say? My eyes opened wide, my body relaxed. I'm not sending you off cold. Your mentor will be with you for a month, and then you will transfer over to that branch. Thank you. I felt free from Jordan and Brandon. If I could get away from Brandon, I would be happy, and let him work out his problems with Angela. In that month I will be away. That should give you time to miss me. That came as a shock. He wants me to miss him. I like him, but I will not miss him. I miss Brandon, and I haven't seen him in a day. Weeks passed and I did miss Jordan. I was used to him staring out of his door at me. I missed the attention I had garnered from him. It was a Friday, and Chris texted me to meet her in the village at a piano bar. After work, I caught a cab and rushed over there. I hadn't seen her since she returned from Paris. She was holed up in her boyfriend's apartment. I walked into the bar and saw Chris sitting alone at a small table for two with a view of the street. She waved and I sauntered around to meet her. I leaned over and gave her a hug. "You look different, Tyler." Chris's eyes followed me, searching my face, body, and movements as if the ugly duckling had turned into a swan. "I feel different, if that's what you mean." I wasn't sure what she thought, and I wanted to know more. I passed my hands over my hair. "Is it the new haircut?" It was now shoulder length. "Is it the clothes?" My mentor suggested I purchase new suits, where I can show a little cleavage. "I just received a full paycheck. I don't have to pay anything this week. It's mine." "Maybe that's what you're noticing. It's nothing like a paycheck to make your day." Chris gave me a high five. And clearly she didn't understand the comment about a paycheck, because she never had to work a day in her life if she didn't want to. She had money to last a lifetime. "No. It's more than that. You look different, like a sophisticated woman. Not afraid of anything." The waiter stood and waited until Chris had finished talking. We placed our orders. "I'm having a beer," Chris said. "We should eat first. If I don't get something into my stomach, I get drunk." I looked up at the waiter and ordered a cheeseburger. "I'll have the same, and since I invited you out, I'll pay the tab." "No. It's my treat," I said without caring about the price. I glanced at Chris, who had a beautiful smile and bright eyes to match. "What?" I said, sensing that she wanted to say more. "I wanted to tell you, and I hope you don't get upset, but I knew it was something more. The minute you hear, but there is more. You know, Patrick and I have been together for a while. Well, we're going to be married soon, and because he is a starving artist, he can't keep his apartment," she said to me. Her eyes moved away from mine and settled on the glass of wine and beer the waiter had placed there without fanfare. "What I'm trying to say is that Patrick will be moving in with me. You can stay if you want. I'm not putting you out." No. I had planned on moving out and getting my own apartment," I said, trying to soften the blow for both of us. "I hope you're thinking what I'm thinking." "What?" I said. "You move into Patrick's apartment," she said, studying my expression. I began laughing. I hadn't thought of that. "It sounds like a great idea." "And when you marry one of those rich hunks, then you can move out?" Chris said, locking eyes with me. "I'm not." She interrupted. "Don't tell me you never considered marrying one of them?" "The only one I would marry would be Brandon, and he's already married." "Maybe you could be his mistress," Chris said with a light laugh. "Women do it all the time." "I would never," I declared, knowing well that I considered it, and somewhere in the back of my mind the thought was still lingering there. Never is a long time. Never say what you wouldn't do. You didn't think you would give up your virginity to him, and you did. My smile turned down. She knew I was upset. She didn't do it on purpose, but my feelings were out there for everyone to see, and I didn't know how to rein them in. Then I remembered what Chris had said before. She smiled, and now I smiled. She said once, "Everyone in this circle of rich people is playing the game. Don't stand in the arena like a Christian for the lions to tear you apart. Learn the game." When I glanced down again, a large cheeseburger with pickles, tomatoes, onions sat on my plate in front of me. I was trying to figure out how to eat the thing when I looked out at the street, and as close as I am to Chris, a red sports car with a young woman sitting in the passenger seat pulled up and stopped at the light. It was Brandon in the driver's seat, and a pretty girl about 19 or 20, laughing and swaying to the music. I leaned forward, watching the car drive away. "Did you see that?" "What?" Chris said, looking around, but not in the direction I wanted her to look. "It was Brandon, and he was with a woman, and it wasn't Angela." The words were choking me. The air became stale. Chris placed her hand over mine. "You're upset. The only thing that can stop this is a little drinking and a lot of dancing. There's a club not far from here, and the most eligible bachelors hang out there. What do you say?" "I say let's go for it. It's a Friday night." "What the hell?" I took a large swallow of my Heineken and called for another bottle. "Hell yes," Chris said to me.